Welcome to the very short description of the prophetic role of lay people. I've called it Joining Christ the Prophet because, as we said before, uh, Christ basically has his whole existence structured by what God was already doing in the Old Testament. If you look on this slide here, looking back, we can see that if you imagine a timeline down the center of the screen, that God basically used priests, prophets, and kings to deal with his people in the Old Testament. Bear in mind, we are now the New Testament people of God. And all of these roles, these three, converge in Jesus Christ, who is the prophet, and we have references to that in the gospel, the priest, and we have the whole Passion Week showing us his priesthood, and lastly, he is the king, with that great play on the people wanting to make him king and how Pilate describes him in the crucifixion. And so we're seeing the spiritual form of the church being set up. The church is represented by that black egg shape there on the right-hand side, because Christ stays, he is the center of the church. It's not that we look back to an absent Christ. He is, in fact, fully alive, which is where a lot of the doctrine of the real presence comes from. And he is working as priest, prophet, and king through us. And this, for lay people, should mean that if we diagram it out on this slide here, we can see that his truth and his grace, represented by that pale green, all of this, of course, is happening in the church, not necessarily in the church building, because we literally carry Christ with us as baptized people. And this is all Christ's truth and grace is coming to the lay person, represented by that reddish circle there. And here is the part that's never kind of really made clear for lay people, that lay people are carrying this enormous spiritual power, in this case prophetic power. And we have to be clear, this is not predicting the future. That's not the kind of prophecy we're talking about. Through the Old Testament, most prophecy was, look, this is what God's will is in this situation now. That is prophetic. And so the lay person, represented by the red circle again, does a whole bunch of different things, which is why it's so complicated talking about lay people. But the blue, the green, and the yellow arrows show all the activities, some of the activities of the lay person. And so the lay person is going to be working in family and business, in law, in doing simple things like working with the neighborhood watch, with one sports club, whatever it happens to be. And it's up to the lay person to carry the prophecy, in other words, the truth of God, into the sports club, the law court, the supermarket, one's business, when one's driving on the highway, etc., etc. And it is that creative moment which really makes the greatest challenge for lay people, because basically, how do you bring Christ's truth into this situation. Now, if you want to see it laid out, go to the Constitution on the Church in the Modern World that was issued by Vatican II. And there you will find, in Part 2 of the document, or put it this way, some of the areas in which lay people work. And that could be marriage, it could be culture, it could be government, it could be international affairs. I think that's all I can remember from that document. But in each one of those, you can see the truth of Christ laid out in a short form, maybe, I don't know, 5 paragraphs. And that really summarizes in a powerful and really excellent way. I mean, this document is very much underappreciated. But in this situation of the lay person, there are the basic truths of being a lay person in all the different areas. And that is how the church reaches into the modern world. Thank you very much.